Welcome everybody to the talk of our Squirrel and Pine Marten survey for 2022. Just so everyone is aware going in, these are preliminary findings. We haven't got concrete evidence for anything that we're suggesting today. We haven't done the statistical analysis, I should say. So it's all just what we're drawing from our initial readings of what we're seeing. So please don't put anything on Twitter or take any pictures of anything at the moment, because there's still some finishing touches to go on to everything, and we still do a little bit more analysis first. So just before we start the talk properly, I am going to launch a wee poll here. I would want to know out of you guys, how many of you, before you heard of this talk, had heard of our survey before? So had you heard of it before? Have you participated in it in the past? Or is this the first time you've heard anything about the Ulster Wildlife Squirrel and Pine Marten survey? It's good for us to know how much we're talking about the work that we do, something that we as conservation staff, we often get caught up in doing the work that we're doing and we forget to shout about it and talk about it. So it would be great to know what you guys have heard from us before in the past. Everyone's voted very promptly there, which is brilliant. We have 33 people who voted, brilliant. So can you see the results of that, Katie, out of interest?
Oh, I can, yes.
You can. Beautiful.
So we've got 58% have heard of it, which is great. 9% have participated and 33% haven't heard of it.
Perfect. Okay, right. So 58% is pretty good. 33% whereas still a bit to work on, but it's great that most of you have heard of it before. And thank you for those who have participated too. We couldn't do it without you, literally. So hang on, I'm just going to close that. Oh, no, you've closed it. Perfect. Okay. There we go. Perfect. So the Ulster Wildlife Squirrel and Pine Marten survey, it's a presence of absence survey that allows us to monitor the distributions of our three target species. So red squirrels, grey squirrels, and pine martens. And so the survey now is carried out every 2 years, but it has been based upon the work of a scientist called Dave Tosh, who first ran it in 2014 and 2015. All of the Ulster Wildlife previous reports from the presence absence surveys of the past are all available on the Ulster Wildlife website. If you do a wee quick Google search, that will set you into the right place for that. But what the survey does is it tries to get a feel for presence absence of these species across the whole of Northern Ireland. It's really, really crucial that this survey is done the way it is, because if we were just going off sightings of these species is proof of presence, but it's not proof of absence. And whenever you're talking about pine martens and the squirrels as well being high up in the trees, you know, sometimes you don't see them that well. They're very hard to survey for. Pine martens being a nocturnal species, is often very hard to see them out during the day. So doing a consistent survey like this allows us to get a more accurate picture than just sightings does. This work is being funded by the Northern Ireland Environment Agency. Without their assistance and support, we would not be able to carry out this survey. So why are we carrying out the survey? I'm going to quickly run through why, but basically it's because of these three species have a really, really interesting and ever-changing dynamic. You have the red squirrels, the grey squirrels, and then the pine marten as well. So quick history lesson. So grey squirrels were introduced in Ireland in County Longford in 1911. There was 12 grey squirrels were given as a wedding present to a wealthy landowner, and they have sired every other grey squirrel that is now on the island of Ireland. Grey squirrels are a problem because they outcompete our native red squirrels for food, and they also spread a deadly disease called squirrelpox, which the grey squirrels are actually immune to, but for the red squirrels, it's really nasty. they, end up losing limbs and everything. It's nasty, but it ends up being lethal for them. But the grey squirrel is immune. And you can see the impact that the grey squirrel has had in Britain and Ireland over the last 70 years. It's amazing to think that 75 years ago, red squirrels were so abundant everywhere, and grey squirrels were not in the island of Ireland. And you can see there where the greys have spread out from County Longford, and they're now, almost everywhere on the eastern / central part of Ireland. And you can see the even more dramatic shift in Britain as well. And then, of course, we have the pine marten. Why do we bring the pine marten into this survey? Well, pine martens have recovered in the last 150 years. This is a map of a pine marten survey that was done in Ireland in the 1970s and 1980s. And the little black squares are squares where pine marten scat was found, and the light grey squares are areas where the pine marten scat wasn't found but was searched for. And then you compare that to the 2019 data from the All Ireland Squirrel and Pine Marten Survey. You can see the massive change that's happened for pine martens. Pine martens have recovered, and it's amazing and it's brilliant because they are a predatory species. It's great to see one of our great predators making a big comeback. They're opportunistic. This is a wee selection of the types of animals that they like to eat. And also here's some other things that they like to eat. But of course, the key one for us is they are predators of both red and grey squirrels. And so this ever-changing dynamic between these three species, it's very, very interesting. And loads of world-renowned researchers have been studying it, both in Ireland and in Scotland, to try and understand what's happening. And part of why we do the survey is because things are always changing. We want to keep an eye on what's happening so that if something changes, we can take conservation action if we see something. If you want to know more about this interaction, I did a talk on pine martens last year, and the link has now been made available and public for everyone to watch. So we can put a wee link in the chat at the end, so that if anyone wants to watch that talk in full, then you can go and watch that. It's very, very good, I must say, although I am slightly biased. So the survey itself, how do we do the survey? So it's all done through camera traps or trail cameras, however you want to call it, which is what the object is on the right. It's a remote camera, which is triggered by a motion sensor. And what we do is we bait the camera traps. So we put it up on the tree, and then opposite that tree, we put up a feeder. And this is what a feeder looks like. It's basically like a little bird box, but it's got a clear plastic front so the animals can see the food inside. It's got a wee shelf so the squirrels and the martens can sit on it. And then the lid is a lid. It opens up. It's not fixed like a bird box. And so the squirrel or the marten can push the lid up, open it up, and get inside, get the peanuts. So the feeder and the camera are left out for 2 weeks. And we use this to determine if we think a species is present or absent in the woodland. It's not always foolproof, because sometimes we put a camera out and maybe we don't get species, but we know that certain species have seen in that woodland. But often it is the case it's really good at finding the species if they are present there. It's interesting, actually, whenever this survey first started in 2014, it was just about mapping red and grey squirrels. But pine martens became so prevalent at these feeders that it was a big surprise to everybody. But they've actually been incorporated into it now as well, because it is such an effective method of surveying for them, more so than the previous method, which is to go out and search for pine marten scat or pine marten poo in the forest, which would have been a lot of effort in comparison with putting up a camera for 2 weeks. So the aim strategically across the country for the survey, every year we try to cover at least 150 woodlands, so we get a really good spread. There's core sites that have been surveyed from the very beginning, and we're maintaining surveying of those sites in particular so that we can monitor any significant changes that are happening there. We work with other ENGOs and Red Squirrel volunteer groups. Volunteers are a big part of the survey. The survey would not be as successful as it is without volunteers, so we're indebted to them. So thank you if any of you are on the call today. And the surveys are carried out throughout 2022. So we accepted surveys from January all the way through into December. The exception is the late summer autumn period, because there's so much natural food out there, and the squirrels don't come to the feeders as readily. But in the winter and the spring and the early summer, they're all out there getting at the feeders, trying to fatten themselves up. Often you would find maybe one animal would turn up on the feeder on day 2, and it would revisit the feeder every single day until it exhausted all the peanuts in the feeder. So you put out your camera, you've left it out with a feeder, you've bathed it with peanuts, and you've left it for 14 days. And then you end up looking at the camera trap and you get some fantastic pictures of mice. Yes, that's it, mice. We have hundreds and thousands of pictures of wood mice. If anyone's out there and wants to study wood mice in Ireland, come to us. We have some fantastic data for you. But yes, of course, we do get other things too. We get, yes, more mice. These mice here are some of my favorites. These were I called the teleporting mice. I had no idea how they kept getting into it, but they did. Every night they'd come to that little feeder and then they'd just hop inside. Don't know how they did it. But yes, we did get some other species too. We did get, oh wait, no, that's a bird. Yes, of course, we got birds as well. I forgot about the bird picture. We got, this is a lovely jay actually. We did get red squirrels. Oh wait, no, I forgot about the deer as well. Yeah, we get deer too. Lots and lots of deer, red deer, fallow deer, seeker deer. It's amazing what you get on these cameras. It's brilliant. Finally, right, red squirrels. Oh, right, okay, that's not the best picture of a red squirrel. Sometimes that's all you get. The camera's too slow for it, and it's when the squirrel's too fast. But sometimes you would get just a beautiful picture of a red squirrel. You would get that little picture there. Sweet Judy was my first red squirrel of the season, and I was very, very excited to get it. Of course, some don't pose in the same way. There's definitely a few characters on the feeders. This is my favorite flying squirrel, for example. And then these are 2 other wee cuties that I absolutely adored as well. What I really liked about these ones is it shows you the color difference that you get in the red squirrels, or can get in the red squirrels. The one on the left there, I nicknamed that one Blondie. You can see it's beautiful, beautiful blonde tip to its tail. And it's got those fantastically long ear tufts that are just being blown back there in the wind. Ear tufts is a diagnostic feature between red squirrels and grey squirrels. Grey squirrels don't have ear tufts like this. So if you see wee tufts on the squirrel, you know it's a red squirrel. Blondie there visited the feeder loads of times and got really, really fat, as you can also see in that picture. And then the one on the right, really, really dark tail. So it shows you the difference in the coloration between different squirrels. We didn't just get the red squirrels, we did get the pine martens. Yes, these wee cheeky chappies were always up to no good. Here is my favorite, this absolute poser here. She's lovely. The wee pups, or the wee kits, sorry, they are always messers. I really like this one because the one on top, it looks dead cute, but it's actually standing on its sibling's head. It's crushed its head inside the feeder. Very, very naughty little kit, that. And then there's another cute one of it out in the daytime. There you go, they're 8:30 in the morning. That's the best time to see a pine marten, is either dawn or at dusk. If you're not going out at nighttime, that's when they'll be starting to wake up or starting to go to sleep. So not exclusively nocturnal. And then, of course, the grey squirrel. Ooh, hiss, hiss. Yes, the grey squirrels, we did get a few of them as well. I quite like this picture, and then also this picture here, because it shows you another difference between the red and grey squirrels. Sometimes when you've got the night vision of the camera, it's hard to tell them apart. But as the great tip is inspecting here on the left-hand side, the red squirrel tail, the color is the same the whole way along, whereas in the gray squirrel, their hairs are colored slightly differently. So the edges of their tail are what's called haloed. They've got this little white ring around the edge of it. So even though it's in black and white, we can't see the color of the squirrel, and we maybe can't make out its ears, you can still see the tail and see that little gray edge into it. So here is where we surveyed this year. So every pink square that you're seeing there is a 10 kilometer square. And if it's pink, it means at least one woodland within that 10 kilometer square was surveyed. So we surveyed across all 6 counties, and we tried to get as best coverage as we could, working with partners and local volunteers as well. So we didn't get every single square. It's actually turns out is a monumental effort to try and go out to all of these places. But we did a very, very good job. I think 110 kilometer squares in the end were surveyed, so not bad at all. Want to give a big shout out and thank you to everyone involved. This is a map of all the different partners that were involved in the survey. We've got all the different squirrel groups that submitted their data to us, which is amazing. You can see that some of them have been absolutely amazing. And then there've been a few other organizations involved as well. So thank you all so very much. And thank you very much to Forest Service for giving us permission to survey in a lot of their forests as well. So wonderful stuff from some wonderful people who all care about wildlife. It's great to see, so many different people being involved in conservation action in Northern Ireland. Brilliant. So the results of 2022. Now I'm going to launch another poll now. Which species of the 3 species do you think was recorded the most? What do you guys think? Of all 3 species, what do you think is the most commonly found on our survey? I'm very, very interested to see what you guys think, because obviously a lot of us live in towns and cities where we're seeing grey squirrels all the time. And so maybe grey squirrels are the most present on our surveys. You look at that pink map, do you think is grey squirrel the one that's mostly there, or is it pine marten, or is it red squirrel? What do you think? Okay, perfect. Nearly everyone's voted.
You see the answer there?
I can see the answer. Yeah. So we have in last place the red squirrel with 6%. We have in second place the pine marten with 31%, and in first place the grey squirrel with 63%. So the majority of you think that grey squirrel are the most abundant species on our survey. Interesting, very interesting. Well, you don't have to wonder any longer. We know what the answer is. Drum roll. In third place, we have technical difficulties. In third place, we have the grey squirrel. The grey squirrel was seen in 48 woodlands. I forgot there we surveyed 217 woodlands. So we did much better than the previous survey, which is fantastic. Ulster Wildlife's effort is about the same. So the extra woodlands that were surveyed have been done mostly by volunteers and partners, which is just amazing. So yes, the grey squirrel is actually in third place. It's not first place. In second place, we have the red squirrel. So the red squirrel was seen in 72 different woodlands of those 217. And in last place, first place, we have the pine martens in 81 woodlands, or 89 woodlands, which is absolutely cracker. And you can see this picture here, there's 4 pine martens all on the same feeder, just to emphasize that they were the most abundant species on our survey, which is amazing, absolutely amazing. You wouldn't have thought that. In fact, most of you didn't think that. So that's brilliant. Of course, there was a few duds there. 64 of the woodlands that we surveyed did not have any of the 3 species that on our target list. There's a number of reasons for that. Part of what this survey is doing is establishing a long-term data set. And so every year you might get an anomaly. Maybe something was happening at the particular time when it was put out. Maybe there was some disturbance in the forest. Maybe it was just random chance. Squirrels and martens didn't happen across it. And, you don't know. In 1 year doesn't tell you the whole picture. But once you start to build up over 10 years, you can start to see the trend and all those random events disappear. One of the big things for us this year was the weather. The summer was very, very hot, and it was very, very dry. And it made a lot of trees go into fruit a lot earlier than we would expect. So normally we would stop surveying, as we start to head into the autumn. But this year, last year, we had to stop surveying about mid-July, August, because there was no animals coming to the feeders, and there were definitely woodlands where, they'd be coming down with squirrels and pine martens, and people would be seeing them, and they just weren't going to the feeders because there was so much natural food available in the wider habitat. So sometimes you get anomalies, sometimes you get weather conditions affecting things. So it doesn't mean that these woodlands are completely absent of these species. Just means we didn't get them this year. So the results, what we really want to see. So this is a map of the 10-kilometer squares that had at least one woodland with red squirrels. And so you can see here that there is more squares out in County Fermanagh than there is in any other county. But crucially, there is a red squirrel square in at least one place in every county. I said that wrong there, but all 6 counties have red squirrels. That was what I meant to say. So you can see here, all the key populations, they're still sort of around the outside of Northern Ireland, and they're sort of fragmented. They're not really joined up. This isn't a massive change from the very, very first survey in 2014, 2015. The red squirrels are sort of in the same similar places. Squares have disappeared and changed since then. But in comparison with, 8 years ago, there hasn't been a dramatic change in red squirrels, which doesn't sound, brilliant. But it is really good because this was a species in major decline, and they've actually, they're not in decline, it would appear, in Northern Ireland, so it's really, really exciting. Grey squirrels, on the other hand, is the distribution map is rather interesting. You can see here that there is a big trend for squirrels in the east. There is a big, big pocket there around Belfast. You can also see the urban areas of Newry and Derry, Londonderry, and Coleraine on this as well. And around Lough Neagh tends to have grey squirrels. And in fact, all these places that you're seeing them, there tends to be big river catchments. The Ban is covered in grey squirrels, and so it shows you how important these river corridors are for grey squirrels moving out of these big cities and going out into the wider countryside. But there's a big difference here between this map and the one in 2014. You can see the one in 2014, there is 2 squares there in Fermanagh. Fermanagh is now grey squirrel free, but hasn't been a recorded population, breeding population for Fermanagh now for a number of years. But interestingly, from this 1 year, Tyrone doesn't have very many grey squirrels at all. Now, it doesn't mean that there's no grey squirrels in Tyrone. There certainly is. They just didn't appear on our survey this year. But it'll be interesting to see as we go through the next survey and the next survey, if this trend continues of not seeing grey squirrels on this survey in County Tyrone. Could this be that grey squirrels are shifting further east and being lost from the west? We don't know. We can be hopeful that that's the case, but it's certainly promising. So it's crucial to know that there are red squirrels in all 6 counties of Northern Ireland, but grey squirrels are only in 5 counties in Northern Ireland. So red squirrels are actually, they're doing okay. They could well be winning the fight. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. And then lastly, we have the pine marten. Now, you can see here, pine martens are virtually everywhere. Again, there's a lot of them out west, but they're all across Northern Ireland. There's a big strip of them in the Glens. You have them even around the Ards Peninsula there and in South Down. Everywhere. It's brilliant to see. And when you compare that to the first year that pine martens were surveyed, as I was saying earlier, they weren't looked for in 2014, but they popped up so much they were added. So the first year of data we have is actually 2017. I have made a mistake there. So this map on the left is from 2017. You can see the difference in the spread of pine martens in these 5 years from our survey. It's absolutely amazing, isn't it? Pine martens are well and truly in recovery, and they who knows, maybe they're the one that's making a difference out west. That's what we believe anyway. And hopefully, maybe if they're becoming more dense in other areas, they will have an impact on grey populations in other places as well. So it's very, very exciting. It's great. We're ahead of the curve in terms of pine marten recovery. Britain, it's not the same. There's some pine martens in Scotland, but they aren't recovering in England, Wales at the same rate as they are in Northern Ireland. So it's brilliant to be on the forefront of this. It's very, very exciting. This is a wee picture that shows you where red squirrel and grey squirrel were recorded in 2022. And there's actually not much overlap at all for the red squirrel. Whenever you consider just jump back, this map and this map, there's quite a lot of places where there's red squirrels and there's quite a lot of places where there's grey squirrels. But whenever you put those two maps together, there's only a few places that have both red and greys. And so this is really useful because this tells us where we need to target our conservation effort, where we need to protect our red squirrels from the grey squirrels. And the local people on the ground, they know about this, they understand about this conflict here and the effort, but it just goes to show you that from a strategic perspective, these are the areas where red squirrels and grey squirrels are coming into contact with each other in general. So we know to target our conservation efforts in these places. So this map shows you the crossover between grey squirrel and pine marten. So now the pine martens are spreading further east and are more abundant further east. They're starting to be recorded in the same places as grey squirrels. What I wanted to show here, though, is this next map has the red squirrel map and the pine marten map overlaid. And you can see here that there's many, many more squares where pine martens are coexisting with red squirrels, where they're coexisting in the same woodlands. It's much reduced for grey squirrels, whereas red squirrels and pine martens are getting on okay, especially in Fermanagh. But you can see they're up in the glens there as well. So pine martens, the unlikely ally, are helping us with the red squirrel conservation effort. It's wonderful. So just comparing with the Ulster Wildlife's 2017 data, what the changes are in terms of the species in woodlands. So red squirrels in 2017, 53 woodlands were found to have red squirrels. But in 2022, 72 woodlands were found to have red squirrels. So there's a little bit of a jump up there, which is quite nice. Grey squirrels, in comparison with 2017, it was 50 woodlands, and now in 2022, there's 48 woodlands. And so it's about the same, a little bit of a decline there. The spread definitely, we were showing on that map, seems it's more eastern than it was originally. But now, they're still being found in a lot of the woodlands that they were seen in before. And then the pine martens on the far right there, in 2017, they were found in 45 woodlands. And now in 2022, they've been found in 89 woodlands. So that's a big, big jump. They are spreading rapidly. It's very, very interesting to be at this time for pine martens because they were such a critical level for so long. And it appears in the last 10 years, their population are just expanding, they're just exploding. And it's wonderful to see because they're well, they're not a keystone species, but they're a top predator in our food chains. And for ecosystems to restore to their natural balance, we need predators. And so it's brilliant to have pine martens out there in the numbers that they appear to be in. So it's perfect. So in summary, the red squirrel spread across Northern Ireland is very, very similar to what it was at the very, very first survey, but it appears to still be fragmented. Grey squirrels are very, very strong in the east, but they're not as strong in the west as they were, which is really good news. And hopefully that trend continues to happen. And pine martens are spreading everywhere, which is amazing. And absolutely amazing. A beautiful, beautiful species as well. That's a lovely picture of that. To have in Northern Ireland. So Ulster wildlife work is very, very varied. Katie and I end up doing lots of things, but on red squirrels, we've done a lot in 2022. So we've been involved in the survey. We've been involved in launching the red squirrel strategy for Northern Ireland, which is helping giving advice to landowners and stakeholders for how to manage for red squirrels, what we need to do to protect red squirrels for the long term. We've been involved, you might know, seen that picture down left in the news, if you've been reading the news. Ulster Wildlife have been involved with a number of partners, the Heart Down Red Squirrel Group, Belfast Zoo, and NIEA, and the National Trust to release red squirrels in the Castle Ward, which has been successful. It's been brilliant. We continue to support the red squirrel groups across Northern Ireland. If anyone's from the groups, you'll be getting emails from me in the coming weeks again, once I get my head out of all this data and report writing. And then at the bottom there, we have launched our new sightings database. So this is for recording red squirrels and grey squirrels and pine martens on the Ulster Wildlife website. You can go on to this website link and have a look and see where red squirrels and grey squirrels have been seen in your area or all across Northern Ireland. I have selected here on this image, these are all the sightings that were sent to us in 2022. So you can see there's more red squirrel sightings there than there is grey squirrels, but grey squirrel sightings are just as important because we need to know where the greys are in order to protect our reds. So yeah, thank you all very much for listening. If you have any questions, we'll have some time to take them now. This QR code on the left-hand side here is for our squirrel sightings database. If you're ever out and about, you can do it on your phone. You don't have to do it on the computer. And so that QR code is the link to that website. And we will also put a link in the chat as well if anyone wants to have a wee look and play about on the map right now. Yeah. Are you still there, Katie? Have we got any questions whilst I find?
Yes. If you just want to stop sharing there.
Yes, I can. Perfect. Where are we for time? Oh, we're okay. We're okay for time. I didn't go on too long.
Grand. So a few people, I've been trying to answer this as we went along. Someone did ask how many sites are surveyed in each woodland. And sometimes it's hard to decide what is classed as a woodland. You know, we've had this discussion because sometimes a woodland is huge, it's made up of different blocks. So normally if it's different blocks, we'll survey those blocks and class those as different woodlands. But normally we try and survey in the exact same grid reference that was surveyed the years before in that same area of woodland. And the idea is that the reason why we leave it up for 14 days is because it draws animals in. And the survey used to be done for 7 days minimum. And we realised that after the 7 days, like sometimes it takes species a bit longer to find the feeder. So sometimes a grey would find it quickly, but it would take a red like 10 days to find it, and things like that. So that's why we have those 14 days to give them a chance to kind of be drawn in. Did anywhere have all three species?
Yes. There were two sites with all three species. No, I didn't have that map because there was only two places, and I am trying to remember where they are. I believe one of them was on the Ards Peninsula, which is the same as that little yellow map we had. And I think the other one was up in the Nevena direction, or in the northwest, I think maybe. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to look that up.
There's a couple of sites, it's interesting, isn't it, that we know have all three but didn't show up on the survey, you know. So the likes of Castlewellan, for example, isn't on there because we got nothing on the camera, but we know there's reds, greys and pine martens in those woodlands. So sometimes you can just get that happens, you know, and that's why Ross was explaining why we collect long-term data.
Well, that's it. Next time we probably won't get that. Maybe we'll get all three species, or maybe we'll just get one species or whatever. So over a long period of time, those little errors should iron themselves out.
So somebody's asking, is there any evidence of bird predation by pine martens?
Bird predation by pine martens, as in pine martens eat birds?
Yes.
Yes, pine martens do capture and eat birds. They're opportunistic hunters. They will go for whatever food source they can get. It often changes with the seasons. So in the springtime, they'll be going into nests and taking birds' eggs, and they'll catch small birds, and they'll catch big birds. If they sneak up on a crow, they'll get a crow, and they'll basically try to get whatever they feel that they can tackle. But in the later months, in kind of autumn times, they'll move away from eating those sorts of foods and start to eat, you know, seeds and nuts and berries and things that are around, and fungi as well, you know. So
they are lazy. That you say opportunistic, but lazy is the right answer. It's just like any predator, they eat what's in front of them, you know. So they don't go out of their way. They don't go out of their way to hunt a grey, you know. But if it's there, they'll catch it, you know. So, and that kind of goes on to the next one. Just as someone's saying, should we be cautious of population collapse of pine martens if greys disappear? And actually, no, because they don't rely on grey squirrels in any way. And some of the reasons why the evidence shows that it's not always pine martens predating greys, which is why they disappear. You know, sometimes it's like a behavioural thing why they actually go. So it's not that they're killing them all and they're going. It's a strange like fear response that they have as well. So no, they don't rely on grey squirrels at all. So they'll be fine.
They'll take advantage of whatever food source is around. So yeah, grey squirrels aren't dependent on them.
And they do eat a red. Do you know they will eat a red squirrel? Which is why we need healthy populations of reds, which is why they coexist so well together. But our issue is when we have these small, tiny, fragmented populations of reds, those are at the most risk. Someone's asking if pine martens been seen in urban areas. So yeah, they have, but all of the evidence shows that pine martens will not have an impact on greys unless they're at a high enough density. And they can't get to high enough density without woodland. So in urban areas, yeah, you get them, and we've had problems, you know, they try and nest in people's roofs and things like that, and they can be slightly urban, but really they're not going to have a major impact on greys in the urban areas, unfortunately, which is what we would love to see happen, but it's not very likely.
I've just put into the chat there a link to our talk on pine martens from last year. So if anyone's interested to learn more about pine martens, there's a link there to our talk from last year.
Someone's asking about overall numbers. So that is basically abundance, which is what we don't have. So what we have is presence absence, which is spread. So we know where they are, but we don't have an idea about density and abundance. But what we do know is that grey squirrels exist in much higher densities than reds. So they can breed more, and they're just can be a lot more of them in an area. So you can get loads and loads of them in an urban area, like hundreds, whereas you might get like 6 reds existing in a woodland. So we know that they exist in much lower numbers, basically, which is another reason why it's a problem.
Someone's asked any correlation on types of woodlands with red and greys. So yes, there is a correlation. Greys are not found as commonly in conifer plantation. That's just the way it is. Although in survey sites, especially in Fermanagh, that are mixed woodlands or deciduous woodlands, we're not seeing greys, we're seeing reds. And that's where is a natural red squirrel habitat. They are naturally using deciduous woodlands in the environment. This tendency for them to be in places with conifer trees is just something they've had to do out of necessity, because grey squirrels don't survive well in these conifer woodlands. I can think of maybe one conifer woodlands that I got a grey squirrel in for 2022, but out of 217 sites, that's one anomaly.
So yeah, that's important to know, because when you look at it, you think, oh, the reds are all thriving in the conifers, which they kind of are, but that's because they've been pushed there. So in an ideal world, they would be in native hazel woodland, oak woodland, things like that,
And it's the same with urban areas too. In Northern Ireland, our urban areas, grey squirrels dominate, and we don't have red squirrels dominating in urban areas in the same way. But on the continent in Europe, red squirrels are an urban species too. It's just that the grey squirrel has taken their place, so to speak. It'll be interesting to see in the next number of years. People in Enniskillen now report seeing red squirrels in their garden. Will Enniskillen be, as covered in red squirrels as Belfast is in grey squirrels? We don't know, but it'll be very, very interesting to see what happens if they're starting to move in the urban areas that are absent of greys.
There's another one. Someone's asking, when the greys are gone, do you think we'll be controlling pine martens? So, I mean, pine martens are a priority species. So the reason we control greys is because they're not native. Pine martens are native. So I'm hoping we'll never get to that. But I do know that with the increase of any predator, there is conflict. And we know that already. Pine martens kill chickens and nest in rows and can be a nuisance in areas where there are lots of them. But this is a good thing. We want to see them spreading, and there's lots of great advice out there about how to pine marten proof an area. And they're never going to get to numbers where they're like a crazy pest. You know what I mean? They can't. We don't have the habitat for that. But it's so lovely to see them spreading, and they're another priority species, and it's great. And it's like one of our very few positive conservation stories that we can share,
And as predators, they have a natural role to play in the ecosystem. And in Ireland, we're never going to get wolves or bears or any of those sort of species back. So getting pine martens back is fantastic, and it's going to do wonders. And we can see how having a natural predator can help control an invasive species, how valuable that is. It helps our ecosystems be resilient to any changes that happen to them. Loads of questions coming in, which is brilliant. It's great to hear that people are interested in the animals we work on.
It's all about pine martens, so it's all people always want to know more about pine martens. Makes me laugh. No one's asking any question about red squirrels, really. But there's one. Any evidence of an increased immunity to pox? Suppose we don't know that. We don't know. I think we had an outbreak of pox last year. We know it's about. It's not really prevalent, but I think it's probably really under-recorded, because if a red dies of pox in the woodland, what are the odds? First we have to find it, so what are the odds that we get to that squirrel before a fox takes it? So pox could be out there. The only way we find out is if we're monitoring, like some of the groups are monitoring or we're monitoring, and we see a squirrel on the camera on the feeder, and we get evidence of it. Or somebody finds a dead one. I think it is under-recorded, but at the minute it's still having an impact, and no, they're not evolving any kind of immunity, unfortunately. That would be great, but unfortunately not.
We have, being bigger animals, do you think the pine martens can disperse further each year than the reds? Almost certainly, yes. So a adult male pine marten will have a territory that can be huge. It could be 10 kilometers of roaming for it, or even 20 kilometers of roaming for one pine marten in its territory. One male pine marten, I should say. So they do move a lot more than red squirrels. Red squirrels only really move in the springtime whenever they're looking for mates. They'll start spreading out from their areas to find somewhere new to settle down and have lots of baby squirrels. But they can move too. They could move, a kilometer, 2 kilometers, and to search for new places and new females. But they don't move as far as pine martens, no. But over time, if Northern Ireland was grey squirrel free and we had loads of brilliant, connected, beautiful woodlands, red squirrels would get there in the end. That's the dream, to be able to connect up all these pockets of reds and for them to be able to move across and take up these new spaces. Are greys susceptible to leprosy like reds? I don't know, actually. Kitty, do you know the answer to that one?
I think they can get it. I think they can carry it. I'm not sure how much they're affected by it. There's still a lot of research going on about leprosy in squirrels. I think it's one of these things it's got a bit mixed up with pox because some of the symptoms are the same and it looks quite similar. So a lot of, I think, red squirrels had actually had leprosy and a lot of people thought it was pox. So you can't really tell unless you send samples off to a lab. I don't know of any greys that have had leprosy. I'd have to find that one out. I'm not 100% sure.
No, I don't know either.
No, it's a strange one. And someone's asking about the contraceptive for grey squirrels. It's a very good question, valid question. Basically, it's not ready yet. It's nowhere near being used. It's not ready to be used in the field. So we work closely with the UK Squirrel Accord, who are developing it. They've been doing so for the last number of years. Ideally, it's kind of aimed at controlling these big source populations in cities and things, and it could work, but at the minute it's not safe to be used in the field yet, so we wouldn't even consider it until it's safe, and we would only be using it in areas where there's greys, but they're trying to design it so they can use it in grey and red areas, which we're quite cautious about. I don't think we would be advocating for that at all, unfortunately. So we can't really, just wait until the contraceptive's ready, unfortunately, because we have all these small populations of reds that are need protected immediately. But it's something in the future and we're following the research very closely.
Another question through here. Are any of the animals tagged like birds are? Not that I'm aware of.
No, but there's quite a few. The animals are microchipped from the zoo. So Belfast Zoo is a breeding program, and they some of the ones that got released all got a little microchip. So if any of them get recaught again, we can scan them. It's just like a wee one you put in a dog or a cat, under the skin, but much smaller. We were trying to design something. We want to see if we can get like a microchip reader on a feeder so that when we do a release, we know when they're coming back, but I don't know if that technology exists yet. That's what we were trying to figure out. So maybe in future releases, that would be really interesting. Wilson, is there any input into agri-environment schemes or any connectivity corridors? Yeah, I mean, yes, we are going to be advocating for, we're not sure exactly what yet, but we will be having discussions with the department on the next agri-environment scheme, because we want to speak to them about red squirrels and also barn owl things that they can include there. Basically, a lot of our future work is going to be focusing on nature recovery networks and how we can connect habitats. So we think this is really, really important. But obviously, we want to make sure before we create a corridor that it's not encouraging grey squirrel spread. You know, we need to, it's all quite complicated, isn't it? So we need to make sure we're only encouraging red squirrel spread. So there's lots of factors involved there, but I think there's definitely a place for it in the agri-environment scheme. So yeah. Might be all the questions. You can jump on if anyone wants to actually talk in person. Feel free. We've got a couple more minutes, but this will be recorded and sent out. If anyone missed it or anything, it will be sent out in a couple of days. If anyone wants to watch it again. Do you have the slide there, Ross, about the future talks? It was just at the end.
Oh, I do have
what's
that.
Coming up? Yeah.
I have been very bad. I have not shown that. It's,
basically because mine's next week and he hasn't even mentioned it.
Oh yeah, of course. Oh dear, that's terrible. There we go. Can you see that, Katie? Okay.
Yeah, it's still on the wee squirrel.
There we go. Perfect. So yes, so this is part of Ulster Wildlife's Winter Talk series. So if you've enjoyed this, there's other great talks happening. Next week, there's going to be even better talk delivered by Katie on Northern Ireland's oils. If anyone wants to tune in for that. There's quite a few interesting ones lined up there. Peculiar peatland plants from bug munchers to bone breakers sounds really cool. I believe that's being held by Roisin. Yes, please tune in for any of these too, or sign up to them now. You have to register on the website. If you can't make the talk the night that it's on, you can get the recording sent to you, or the link to the recording sent to you afterwards. So if there's anything there that you're interested in, go sign up now while there's still spaces and hear from other members of staff from Ulster Wildlife talking about their projects and their wonderful work. And sign up for Katie's oil one. Yep. There we go. Did we do it?
Best one. Yeah, there you go. No. Look, thank you very much, everyone, and thank you for being members and your continued support, and all of that goes back into our work and our conservation work on the ground, so we really appreciate it. And yeah, there's been a few great talks so far. If you missed any of them, there's a great one on the marine life of Rathlin and things like that. So there's loads going on, and they're good to watch back. So thank you, everyone, and we'll let you go and enjoy your evening.
All the best, everyone. Thank you very much for listening.